Usalamedia, estamos aquí de nuevo en Campus, en compañía de Allan Domb, un candidato para la alcaldía de Filadelfia. Ya lo entrevistamos anteriormente y les avisamos que estos micrófonos están disponibles para cualquier persona que quiera una entrevista en Usalamedia, si se pone en contacto con nosotros. I'm just saying that anybody who's interested in coming to talk to us, we're here.
It's great.
We have tried to
That's
talk
great.
to other candidates,
Yeah.
and so we're open.
Thank you.
We don't want to think that we only want to interview you.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Even though we find it very informative to talk to you, because you have experience as a business person and city council, where I think, my opinion, is that you did a great job
Oh,
as
thank
a
you so
council.
much, Fernando. Appreciate
Because
that.
I saw you going to the schools
Right.
and being present, which is very important. So anyway, so this is the second round, so we can bypass some of the bio information. At the debate that I saw with 6 other candidates, there were 7, I think. Reinhardt, 2 Browns,
Right.
Cheryl Parker,
Derek
Helen
Green,
Kim,
Derek.
and yes. So I found it quite informative in terms of, if you want to make a decision about who could run the city, these debates are very informative, and that was one. So I want to ask you a couple of questions that came up in that debate. One of them is education. The other one was Rebecca Reinhardt mentioned the police, and that she was concerned that there were, she mentioned 6,000, I think.
6,400 authorized.
Right,
Yeah.
and that less than half of those are actually patrolling, and that was a surprising number to me.
Right.
So why aren't we putting more people there? I raised that issue before when Maria Quiñones was in council. I said, Maria, why do we have so many policemen watching construction sites? These are very highly trained people, highly paid, and they're like just sitting there all day at a
Right.
construction site.
Well, we're part of a national problem. There's a shortage of policing across the country,
Right.
and we have it in Philadelphia. We have 6,400 authorized police officers in the city right now. We have over 900 out on sick and desk duty. We have over 500 to 800 vacancies.
Right.
So when you add up all the numbers, it's pretty devastating. And we have many that are in what's called a retirement program called DROP, Deferred Retirement Option Program. So we probably have a shortage ballpark of at least 2,000 officers out of 6,400, maybe even a little more. But this has been going on for a while. We also have another problem, and that is retention. We are losing 25 to 30 experienced police officers every month. So think about it. That could be 300 to 360 over a year. And I've always said that it's much more expensive to lose an experienced person,
Sure.
okay, and they already have the knowledge, then the cost of training a new person is substantial. It's much better to keep an existing person and figure out how to retain them than to, train a new person for the police department. But here's the problem. You have a national issue going on. We have many people out on sick and desk duty that we need to bring back in for patrolling. We need to take some of the people on doing the administrative work, 900 officers, hire civilians for those jobs,
Right.
and put the police back out walking a beat. We don't see people walking a beat. Police need to walk a beat. They need to build trust with their community, and the community needs to trust the police. It's very important to walk a beat. That's just one of the things. But Fernando, I'll also say that part of my education program is to develop schools that are specific for some of the openings we have available in the city. For example, we should have 2 or 3 high schools dedicated to training police officers in 9th to 12th grade, firefighters, and EMT. Grow our own. Like the Philadelphia Phillies have 3 minor league
Right,
teams.
right.
We should have teams that grow into these jobs, a pathway. Other countries are doing this.
Right.
So if we had 2 or 3 high schools that were for police officers, EMT, and firefighters, at 18, you can become a firefighter and EMT. You have to be a police officer at 20, so you could become a cadet.
Right.
But this way, we could, in the long term, fill our ranks and have good paying jobs.
Well, it's an excellent idea, but I also suggest that there will be a way of including more minorities.
Absolutely.
Because that's what's lacking in fire firemen and policemen.
Right.
We don't have enough.
So we would have our own police officers living in the neighborhoods if we do it through the school system. We're basically growing our own and allowing our residents to obtain these good paying jobs. But here's another problem that's a bigger picture issue. Since 2020, the pandemic, to 2022, the country saw massive inflation.
Right.
Massive. I mean, salaries went up across the board in the private sector 5, 10, 15%. While government jobs had contracts that had negotiated contracts of anywhere from 2 to 3% typically.
Right.
And so it's become really difficult to keep people in government and to hire people into government because of this massive inflation that occurred in the private sector. And we've lost a lot of people to the private sector.
Right.
And it's become tougher for us to attract people into government. We need to revisit our salary structure.
Okay.
Realistically, we need to pay police officers probably more, to pay government employees more. Look, interest rates in the last year, Fernando, doubled. So the cost of owning a home is doubled in the last 12 months. And we're giving people 2-3% increases. It's not attractive.
And speaking of the education, another thing is pay teachers more.
Yes, it's across the board. When you have these fixed contracts and you have an inflationary market,
Right.
fixed contracts, government-type jobs suffer. Now, the reverse, if we had a depression and people were losing their jobs in the private sector, that's when government does well because it's a steady job.
Right. Well, the issue dovetails with an idea that one way, I think David O. spoke about this, one way to help the schools is to have more policemen patrolling the schools.
Right. Well, we need more police patrolling the schools, especially from 3 to 6 in the afternoon, where a lot of the crime does occur. But we also need cameras outside of every school.
Right.
20 to 30% of the crime is starting in high school. And it's starting over the Instagram and different arguments that in the past would never be settled with a gun, but today it is being settled with a gun. But in the education area, I think we need to also, and I've talked about this with you before, Fernando, we need to teach financial literacy from K through 12 in our schools.
Right.
We need to teach technology K through 12 in our schools. And we need to teach entrepreneurship. In the black and brown community, entrepreneurship is 2 to 3%. In 1972, Dr. Leon Sullivan said, black and brown community has 2 to 3% entrepreneurs, we need more. We haven't moved the needle in 50 years.
But I think he had schools that did some of that.
He did,
right?
yes. Oh, I see. Yes, he had several schools like that. But we need to teach entrepreneurship. And then in high school, I would take a page out of Cristo Rey High School and allow students at their option, go to school 4 days a week, the 5th day work in a job, get credit, get paid, get a summer job, and in this economy, the employer will say, hey, Alan, I know you're coming in on Monday. Can you come in Tuesday through Friday after school and work? So we're taking our kids off the streets and putting them into productivity.
Right.
Cristo Rey High School, Fernando, last year graduated 99% of their students and 100% were admitted to college.
Wow. I know Michael Gomez was in charge of that
Yes,
school.
he
for
does a great job.
so
Yes, great job.
He used to be at St. Joe's Prep, so
Yeah.
I know him very well. Yeah, one of the things that has been discussed is the safety in schools, and I think if we put more policemen there, obviously.
Well,
that would
safety in
help.
the schools, but safety across the city. The number one issue for everyone in the city right now is public safety.
Yeah.
And we have to get the crime under control. But this really, we have a public safety crisis. We have an affordable housing crisis.
Which brings us to the subject that everybody wants to talk about, Kensington.
Right. So in Kensington, I did put in a resolution back in March because Kensington is a disaster. It's the largest humanitarian crisis in the country. And I put in this resolution calling upon federal, state, and local drug and law enforcement with community partners like NKCD and other community partners on the ground to help formulate a plan to solve the issues of Kensington, starting with the following. Number one, we need multi-jurisdictional cooperation of federal, state, and local to shut down the drug dealing. Until we shut it down, we'll never fix the problem. It's like a containment zone right now. It's terrible.
Yes.
And then number two, we need to get the people on the streets into treatment. Those that are not from Philadelphia, and the majority are not from Philadelphia, we need to see if we can get them back to their homes where their families are and get them treatment there. But others, we need to get into serious treatment in Philadelphia. And then there's a third part. And that third part is to restore Kensington. We've allowed it to occur for 20 years, a containment zone. From Kensington and Allegheny down to Lehigh and a few blocks on each side. I would fund, as mayor, a special services district, could cost $5 to $7 million to bring Kensington back, which includes uniformed but unarmed people walking the streets, like the Center City District,
Right.
that includes storefront improvement, street cleaning, includes all those services of a special service district, but the city would pay for it for the first 5 or 6 years. And then as businesses started to come back and growth occurred and we saw people, populating and using Kensington Avenue, we could slowly wean off that expense at 20% a year.
But there is an area of the city that previous mayors have promised to improve, Calle 5, 5th Street, north of Lehigh, the Golden Block and all that. It's still the same that it was 20 years ago.
Right. Well, I don't think there's been the will or the effort to really do it. I understand a lot about how to improve neighborhoods. Look, I've spent over 43 years in the private sector. I've had 2 terms on council. I understand what's needed to clean up these areas. That's what we need to do. We need political will and leadership to do this. The biggest issue in this mayor's race is leadership. This race is all about who's the best person to lead the city, who's going to be able to bring people together to solve the problems, and who's going to be able to be the biggest champion and cheerleader in getting that solved. That's really the key here.
Speaking of bringing people together, you obviously, you might have been already thinking about a cabinet and who's going to be with you in this enterprise. And do you have any minorities in mind, any Hispanics in mind? Are you talking to the right people? I had Gilberto Gonzalez from Community College here, and he said that candidates are talking to the wrong people. They usually only address questions or listen to the heads of the nonprofits, Congreso, Aspira, etc. So there are other voices that I had never heard.
Right.
So that's what I don't know. Are you looking for those people?
I would say after the primary, I'll focus on that. But right now, my thought process is to hire the best, most diverse, most talented people we have in the city to bring them together. And I'll reach out to everybody to have a transition team to help me do that. But, look, I'm impressed with a lot of people, including former council member Maria Canona Sanchez.
Right.
Jennifer Rodriguez did an amazing job at the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Jennifer and Regina Hairston at the African American Chamber and some of the other diverse chambers are the reason why we had the taxes lowered. Jennifer was a super fighter in that, and she was right, 100% right.
She's a great leader.
She is amazing. Okay, I have a lot of respect for her.
Right. How about Rebecca Reinhardt?
I think Rebecca Reinhardt is also a good person, but she's running for mayor right now, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, but will you consider doing the Lincoln thing about a team of rivals that Doris Kearns Goodwin wrote about? Lincoln?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Look, my goal, Fernando, is to do what's best for the city. That's all I care about. I love the city. I want what's best for the city. And I'll say this, if it's me to just run for one term and be a one-term mayor, I would do that. I just want to do what's best for the city.
Yeah, well, I hope if you get elected, I hope it's not one term, because usually not much gets accomplished in that, because between
Let me
finding out what is
let me tell you
happening.
why I say one term.
Yeah.
Because no one owns me. No one.
Well, you mentioned that before.
No one owns me. So I'm gonna do what's right for the city, regardless of the consequences in the short term, because I know in the long term, like if we had taught financial literacy, technology, and entrepreneurship 15 years ago, we'd have a different city today. And we need to think long term. Most politicians think for the next election. Abraham Lincoln said 2 goals, get elected and get reelected. I'm thinking more long term also.
Okay, we're going to take a very short break. Estamos en Usalamedia, estamos en compañía con el candidato a la alcaldía Allan Domb. Regresamos en un momento. Pagano's Market and Bar has been serving gourmet Italian foods in Center City for 3 generations. Call Matthew Pagano for all your catering needs, and during these difficult times, please mention Fernando Mendez and receive a nice discount along with free delivery. Pagano's also makes the finest gift boxes in the city for all your holiday needs. Visit paganosmarketandbar.com. Amigos de Usalamedia, estamos aquí en compañía de Allan Domb, candidato a la alcaldía de Filadelfia. Está respondiendo algunas de las preguntas pertinentes sobre educación, seguridad, la economía, etc. Así que vamos a continuar con estas preguntas. Allan, you're obviously interested in reaching to the Hispanic community, and one of the reasons you come to us is that we are an outlet for that. one of the big problems in a city that's supposed to be one of the poorest urban areas in the
Right.
country, we also have the poorest neighborhood in this city, in the Hispanic neighborhood. How do we start to deal with poverty?
Yeah.
Education and the families together and all that. Everybody says it's too complex to
Right.
deal with that.
So here's the issue, really, though. We are one of the largest cities with the highest level of poverty. Okay,
Yeah.
but when you look at the problems we have, we also are one of the cities with of the top 50 cities, we have some of the lowest average income. Okay, we have some of the lowest average income, and above the top 50 cities, we have some of the lowest average housing costs. So, do we have a housing cost problem or an income problem? Right now, we have both, but in the long term, it's an income problem.
Income problem.
It's a real income problem. I'll share with you some facts, real hard facts. From 2009 to 2018, all jobs that were created in the United States that paid less than $35,000, 29%. In Philadelphia, from 2009 to 2018, all jobs created that paid less than $35,000, the percentage was 60.5. Double. We're double. We're producing low-level poverty jobs at double the rate of everyone else. When you look at the jobs, Fernando, that pay $35,000 to $100,000, the good family-sustaining jobs, those jobs aren't here. We are half of our suburbs.
Right.
Drive out to Conshohocken, Valley Forge, Devon, Malvern, King of Prussia, booming,
Yes.
booming. Then when you look at our employment, of the top 20 employers in the city, only 3 are private sector. Out of 20, Comcast, yes. American Airlines, because of the airport. Number 3 is Allied Security,
That's good.
because of the Guard Service.
Right.
Kind of concerning that the third largest employer is a Guard Service company, right? Out of 20. When you look at Minneapolis, they have 28 corporate headquarters.
Right.
We don't have employment. We need more entrepreneurs in the city. We need to encourage entrepreneurship and support it. Like Jennifer's doing great programs with the Hispanic Chamber for entrepreneurship. We need to do more of that and invest in entrepreneurship, but we also need more employment. And when you look at the reasons why, this is why Jennifer and Regina Harrison, all the chambers were so adamant about the net income of the BERT tax. The highest taxes for an entrepreneur, someone who's opening a new business, who's an employer, and we need employers, in the highest in the country, tax burden, is New York City at 16.2. The second highest in the country is Philadelphia at 15.9. And that's after my bill passed till even lowered, it was higher. The third
And
highest,
the gap in income between the two cities
15,
is not
yeah,
even,
16.2, 15 point. But here's the third highest. Here's our problem. California,
Right.
8.8, we're 15.9. Boston and Chicago are 7, and we're 15.9. And Atlanta is 4. So tell me, if you're an entrepreneur and you want to open a business here,
No.
we're crushing you with taxes.
Right.
Because we put taxes on our books that are specific to the city. And you can see this just driving down City Line Avenue from the Schuylkill. On the right side is Philadelphia, not doing so great. On the left side is Ballackinwood, booming. And it is the tax structure. The problem is we have a tax for businesses, 5.9%, just under 6, that is only for Philadelphia businesses. And Jennifer Rodriguez at the Hispanic Chamber and Regina Harrison at the African American Chamber were really clear about this to myself and my colleagues on council. This is killing small business.
Yeah.
eConsult did a study, Fernando, that said if we eliminated that tax, the 5.9 currently, over the next 10 years, we'd have the potential to create 100,000 new, good-paying $35,000 to $100,000 type jobs. That would be one of the biggest growths we've seen in the city. It seems to me we should be doing that as soon as possible over the next 10 years to get that tax to 0.
Yeah, I was just thinking when you were mentioning the jobs that were created that were poorly paid jobs. Most of them were in the service industry, restaurants and
Well, here's why.
all that stuff.
We had Smith Klein, they left.
Right.
We had Roman Haas, and they left. We had Mother's Works, they went over to Jersey. We had Radiant Insurance, they moved out to the main line. I can go through 20 of them. We had all big employers that paid good salaries. They all left the city, went to the suburbs. We need to attract employment so there's opportunity for our residents. 33% of the people who live in Philadelphia commute to a job in the suburbs. because the opportunity's not here.
Right.
It's a burden.
But isn't that sort of contradictory? I mean, one of the things that many potential employers say is that we don't have the labor force, the trained force to fill those jobs, besides the tax situation.
Well, here's what's happened.
Yeah.
In this day and age now of remote work, people can live wherever, okay?
Right.
And their talent's available wherever. But it is true. If we could fix this taxation policy, we do have the talent in the city. Look, the Inquirer reported, I think a week or two ago, that in the last 2 years, the city lost 33,000 people. Most because of public safety concerns and most because of schools. Okay, 33,000. But what they also reported that were people that were 18 to 24, we had a big growth in young people moving into the city. And I see that because they want to have fun, it's exciting, and it's phenomenal. Where we really lost were people over the age of 50. And most of those people moved out for maybe schools, but also most of it was, I don't feel safe in the city. In fact, last year, Fernando, 52% of the people who live in Philadelphia thought about moving. I'm not saying they moved, because they didn't. They just thought about it. And when I share this with people, they said, yeah, I thought about that. Yes, I thought about that. And we have to change that. That's the job of the mayor. Has to be the biggest champion, biggest cheerleader, and fix these issues.
Yeah, whenever I think about moving, I look around and say, like, no, this is what I want to be.
But you think about it, right?
But this is what I want to be.
Yeah.
I love the city, and I appreciate very much what Rendell did with the Center City area, where it was really flourishing. It was attractive.
Right.
It created more tourists.
No question.
Coming in and all that. And then it has fallen into disrepair, like Walnut Street, so many places.
Well, let me say this.
empty.
We did suffer a lot through the pandemic.
That was
Okay, but I will say this, Fernando. I think we're on the rise. I think a lot of our areas are getting better. A lot of the stores on Walnut Street have been leased up. Look, we have a strong residential population in the core of the city, and that's benefiting those stores and restaurants.
Right.
Where we are suffering, and every other city is having the same issue, whether it's Boston, D.C., or out west, we're suffering in the core office corridors from City Hall, 15th Street, let's say, to 20th Street, JFK, and Market,
Right.
where you have office buildings where 40% of our employment are suburbanites who come into the city and work. And right now, they're maybe coming in 1, 2, or 3 days a week. So we're losing them for all the economic benefits when they go out to lunch, or they go out to dinner after work, or go to happy hour, or shop at retail stores. We're losing those benefits, and they're going to the suburbs right now. And that's why you're seeing more retail and restaurants open in the suburbs. We have to figure out how to bring them back into the city, and we probably have to reimagine some of these buildings. We have to convert them to residential and reimagine the ground floor spaces, because a lot of these spaces are empty right now.
I know a couple of companies that have sold or rented out the space that they occupied before because they don't need it now. They
Right.
have so many people working outside.
It's true. Look, I think we're going through a change, and a lot of people enjoy the remote work, but you're also missing something. This interview wouldn't be the same if it was remote.
Right.
Well,
Well,
you-
it
you-
does.
yeah,
during-
yeah, yeah.
during,
It's
during
not the
Zoom.
same. Yeah.
Zoom was very difficult for everybody, but
Yeah.
especially was distracted. You know? People always had a cat or a dog in
Yeah,
the back,
yeah.
whatever. So, do you see a situation in which people will come back to the offices?
I do see that. I'm not saying it's going to be 100%, but I do see it coming slowly. It's increasing. Could be 75, 80, 85% of what it was. I
Right.
do see it growing because I think you need that connectivity in an environment like that. And it depends on the type of position too. You know, if you're a researcher, you don't need to be in the office.
Right.
But it depends on the type of job where you need to have that, build that, network of culture in an office. I think it's especially hard though for young people who just graduated from a job of school and you have a new job. How do they build a culture? How do they learn from people?
How do you build a culture? Exactly. That's one of the big problems that
Yeah.
the companies have.
Yeah.
I think for that reason alone, many of them should just call people back in.
Right.
Some have done it. But so the COVID situation led what has been called the Great Resignation. You know, all around the country, people just found out that they wanted a different career.
Right.
They wanted to work from home. They found a job near their house, whatever. So we're probably going through a period of fluctuation right now, of change. But
You know,
I'm
that's
like
an
sort of
interesting point.
optimistic about
Yeah,
that.
it's an interesting point you bring up because what COVID showed us was we had a bigger demand for employment, and with the bigger demand for jobs and employment, which I want to create more jobs in the city and more demand, wages went up automatically. Look, I'm in favor of a $15 minimum,
Right.
but I'm going to give an example of TD Bank. If you were a teller at TD Bank in 2019, you were paid $10 an hour. And today, to attract talent because of the labor shortage and more jobs available, it's $22 an hour.
Okay.
So pure demand
Big difference.
really raised rates. Everywhere it's raised rates. That's why I'm saying in government, we have to really look at our salary structure.
So well-paid public
The demand for
servants.
more work.
Yeah.
It's like demand raises wages.
Right. So besides the tax situation, the wages situation, do you know of any company that would decide to come here? I mean, do you have anything in mind, or are you going to contact them?
Well, I
and
think
say,
my
like,
first
come
goal,
back
my first goal as mayor would be to help the existing companies that have been loyal to
to
us
stay here.
and help them expand. And I always say, every small business, every entrepreneur, every one-person business or 2 or 5 or 10-person business, their success is the city of Philadelphia's success. Because when they're successful, we will be successful. We need to support and help every employer. It is so crucial. So start with our base of employment and help every employer try to grow and see what we can do to make them grow and make the city's services easier for them to deal with. Right now, the city is not the easiest place to do business with. We have all kinds of restrictions and regulations, and we take forever to get things done. We need to really make that much more concise and easier process to get things done. You know, best example, Fernando, remember the pandemic in April of 2020?
Sure.
Restaurants were shut down, hotels were shut down, gyms were shut down, but technology was booming and life sciences and law firms were booming. So I called a Zoom of hotels and restaurants to ask them, what can we do to help them? And they said, we need the ability to really operate outside. So I passed the outdoor dining legislation.
Right.
862 restaurants took advantage of it. I put a clause in there that said the city has to approve every application in 3 days. 3 days. 3 days. To the city's credit, because it was in the law, they approved it. 862 got approved in 3 days. You applied, 3 days later you're approved. That legislation saved 10 to 15,000 jobs in the city. And those jobs were in the hospitality business where most people live in the city of Philadelphia. 90% live in the city. You know, you're not commuting from Malvern to a restaurant job in Philadelphia.
Right.
But the lesson was time frames. We need time frames in our legislation. We need time frames in applications. Jennifer Rodriguez gave me a great idea to use an application tracker when you apply for any kind of permit or zoning and have a 2-week update so people know where we are. We should be able to say to someone, you want to open a barber shop? It's 30 days, here's how you do it. You want to open a restaurant? It's 60 days, here are the steps to accomplish it. We will get it done in 60 days. You need a zoning change, it's 90 days. Put time frames in everything, because the private sector, time is so crucial to them.
Sure. And the red tape
Right.
discourages many people from
That's right.
continuing the process.
And a small business owner, a small employer, the red tape kills them,
Yeah.
because they don't have the ability to withstand that lengthy time frame.
Manuel, those outside areas, many of them are gone already, so there's only a few
We have
left.
to make sure the existing ones survive. And, you know, first, your first question was, what can we do for employment? So make sure I stabilize the existing businesses and help them grow. That's my number one goal. And then second, work with the Commerce Department and identify 50 or 100 or 250 companies across the country that we work together to court them to come to the city of Philadelphia. And I'll help sell that, because that's what I do. I'm a salesperson. I'm happy to close any one of them to bring their jobs into our city. Those 28 corporations in Minneapolis, I'd call each and every one of them. Vanguard has a small office in Philadelphia. I'll go out and meet with the chairman of Vanguard and say, we need a bigger presence in the city. What do we have to do to accomplish that? We need employment in the city.
Right. And one way, as you said before, is deal with the tax problem and the labor force. There's probably a time in which politicians right now are on the defensive because there's that conflict with media. How are you doing with your relationship with the media. I mean, not with us here.
You're great. No problem.
Friendly environment. But I mean, that's one of those.
I've never had a
things.
problem with the media. I'm happy to always talk to them. I've never had an issue.
They have questioned your spending all your money on the campaign.
Yes.
Which you claim is for so that you don't owe anything to anyone.
Right.
Right.
You know, it's funny because I grew up with depression-age parents. And so I grew up where my mother actually told me that plastic forks and plastic spoons and knives, we wash them and reuse them, okay? Glasses that I would drink out of, even when I was 16, had ridges around the edges. And I said to my mom, hey, Mom, where'd you get these? Hellman's mayonnaise jars, recycled, okay? When I was 12 years old, my brother was 16. We lived in an apartment, 800 square feet. We had no hot water for 2 weeks. My mother calls the landlord on a Sunday morning. He hangs up on her and says, how dare you call me? Next day, calls the mayor. Week later, we get the hot water, but we get evicted from our apartment building. And my father said, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade, you move on. By the way, the landlord lived in a town we never heard of called Lower Merion. But anyway, I always was working. I mean, I knew the value of hard work. 5 years old, at 5:30 to 7:30 with my brother and I, we'd go out and shine shoes for 25 cents a shine at the bus stop. I had 2 paper routes at 11, 5:30 and 3:30 in the afternoon. I'm in high school at a public school. I'm on the wrestling team. And in 10th grade, I had jobs all throughout, but 10th grade, I was a janitor after wrestling practice at 6 o'clock at night, from 6:30 to 10:30, Monday through Thursday, $1.60 an hour. I was sweeping offices, emptying trash, and doing janitorial work. So I understand the value of hard work. And for me, this was about, I came here with nothing, making $15,000 a year in '76, went into the real estate profession, invested in the city invested in me. This was my small way of giving back to the city I love. And look, I'm very modest in what my needs are, but I know one thing. This investment for me is so important because I love Philadelphia, and I'm concerned about the future of our city. And I've taken my own money and invested in my race, and I won't be tied to anybody this way. And this way, I don't have any dark money, I don't have any PACs, I have none of that stuff. And look, it's a big investment for me. And it would have been easy for me to not run. It would have been really easy and just ride off into the sunset.
Right.
But I remember the quote from Winston Churchill. And Winston Churchill said, we make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. And for me, it's an opportunity to give back to the city I love.
Yeah, it's public service. Is one of the things that people do not appreciate enough. I mean, public servants, always criticize because this happened or
Right.
that happened. Like the most recent one with what was that? The scare with the water. The Philadelphia water. All of a sudden, don't drink the water.
Right. Drink the water, don't drink the water. Right.
They were criticized because it was not announced properly.
The communications was the problem.
But if they had done nothing, it would have been worse. Then
That's
they would
right.
say, "Wow, you did nothing about this," So, we're almost reaching the end of this second interview, and I will thank you again for being with us.
It's my pleasure. Enjoy it.
Anything else you want to tell our audience that now that
I will say this.
the primary is
Yes.
approaching quickly?
Yes. Look, I've spent 45 years in the private sector, 7 years on council, almost 2 terms, and I feel I'm very well qualified to lead the city, and I know my heart's in the right place. And I know the key to this is to bring people together, the smartest, the brightest, the most diverse, to help solve these problems. No one mayor, one person can solve these on their own. And a mayor also has to realize that they're the champion for the city, they're the biggest cheerleader of the city, but also they have the ability to tap into a lot of smart people across the city who want to help. And I will be that mayor who will ask them for help, make the final decision, but I want as much information as possible.
Again, thank you very much
Thank you.
for coming to us. We appreciate your visit.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
We wish you the best in this election.
Thank you.
And muchas gracias a ustedes por acompañarnos en el día de hoy. Hemos llegado al final de esta entrevista con Allan Domb, candidato para Filadelfia, para gobernar a Filadelfia en el futuro, y esperamos que ustedes escuchen este programa para aprender más sobre lo que él tiene planeado para la ciudad. Muchas gracias y los esperamos hasta la próxima.